I would love to know what your hot take is on AI right now. Andrew, token man of the panel, should we start with you?
I would have thought I was last, but all right. Can you hear me okay? All right. Andrew Tweed, I work for 1-800-Flowers. We're a gifting company of about 18 brands. I manage a few brands in the fruit space, so selling chocolate-covered strawberries, amongst other things. So our AI journey, and I don't know how much, I'll try to spin this as a hot take, but one of the common themes that I think we've seen very much applied in our businesses are that if you are not, as a leader, rolling up your sleeves and being in the trenches with your teams, you're going to be really far behind. So a lot of the mandated, we want to do AI, this is what we should do, unless I think you're applying it directly with teams, giving them air cover, taking away roadblocks, and then ultimately being the one paying for speeding tickets. I think if you're not doing that, you're gonna be a bit behind.
So Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Froah. I'm the Global Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer at ETS. It's like my day job. I have a second hat where I am running a P&L called Corporate Solutions, and we're supplying AI-powered solutions for talent management through that, which we very, very topical with skills, so love to get into that later. And ETS, if you haven't heard of us, we're a 77-year-old nonprofit that has historically been in education, so the TOEFL assessment or GRE or Praxis, and we're taking that measurement of science and really expanding that into lifelong learning for the workforce. And so I would have so many hot takes based on those two things, but I would say hot take number one is that AI literacy and the ability to measure that is increasingly important for the future of the workforce. But my second one would be that as AI continues to flood the market, there'll be a lot of fast content. But really, at the end of the day, that content, it has to, the creativity part of it is what's going to hold value, because speed is not going to save you. Originality is, and original thinking, and that is yet another really critical skill, I think, that we all need to have.
Hello, my name's Alicia Parker. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Tishman Speyer. And Tishman Speyer is a company that creates destinations. Some of you may be most familiar with it through Rockefeller Center. And so we own and operate that in the real estate space. We're an investor as well as developer, owner, and operator. We are actually, although most people think of us in New York, we're a global company operating in about 36 markets. And so when we have been thinking about our hot takes, I remember being at IAB when ChatGPT launched, and I was sitting with Stephanie Dobbs-Brown, who was the New York Stock Exchange CMO, in addition to Jay Livingston, who was the Shake Shack CMO at the time. And the three of us were having dinner, and it felt like a bit of a tidal wave. And I think in that moment, we all kind of looked at each other and said, this is going to be about your people strategy as much as it's going to be about your AI strategy. And so I think that continues to be true. I think the second hot take would be, think about building a system as opposed to just looking at the different technology opportunities.
So was that moment when you were at that IAB conference, was that the moment where you went, oh my God, this is going to change my job? Or did that realization come a little bit later?
I got really excited because I think as marketers, one of the questions that was asked before is, does the CEO know what you do? And I think CEOs know what the expectation is, and I've been very lucky where I am to have an understanding of that expectation. But I also think that opportunity to connect brand and business and the measurement challenges that we face in a number of ways, I think what was recognized is this is also an incredible opportunity because it's like a blank slate. So the more you start to learn now how this all works and bring that to your organization, you are not just a marketer anymore. You're really driving and have the opportunity to be much more connected to the rest of the business.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive in on that. I'm really interested in how you guys have been upskilling yourselves, so you know where to be looking for talent and what to be looking for in your talent, as well as any kind of vendors or technology you need to be using. Andrew, is there anything that you have found to be particularly useful when you come to understand this brave new world?
I think it's happening so quickly that I try to rely on places where other people are innovating fast in those discussions. And I think a lot of the discourse has been on Discord. If you look at LinkedIn, Twitter, a lot of the places where people are actively testing, prompting, and doing things. But the biggest thing for me has been actually using the tools and seeing what I can come up with. A big part of it is looking at the problems we're already facing and seeing if we can answer those instead of just manufacturing it. There's a lot of fun personal things as well. But I do think the applied nature of it, at least on my end, has been the most helpful factor. I think, fun anecdote of when I realized it was potentially going to impact my job was when ChatGPT came out with the voice feature, and you could actually talk to your ChatGPT. But on my end, it was talking through a financial model that I had that I was looking at for a friend, and then altering that model and having it spit it back out while driving to go get my passport updated. So that part for me was, all right, some of these skills that I thought back in the venture capital days was going to be a big deal as a youngster, it is really coming on multiple dimensions.
Got it. So you literally have your hands on the keyboard sometimes. You're testing this out in the real world. What does that look like, I guess, in a day-to-day version of your job?
So a lot of my job, sort of as a GM managing a P&L, is now getting the team and a lot of them on board with different products and processes. There's a couple of different use cases that we started out with on the marketing side, because I know that's a big part of the discussion. We do a lot of video advertising. It's predominantly for our couple of gifting brands that are in the food space. What we do, we do full productions, fly out to customers or other people to shoot them having a gifting experience. And in between, we sort of have sometimes a gap between holidays of creative. So we started using about a year ago fully Gen AI video. And that was to create a lot of different product ads. That's now a third of our marketing spend, doing really well. We thought it'd be kind of filler in between, but that's really ramped up. And we've made sure that people who are not creatives who needed to go fly were the ones making it. So a lot of the folks on the more analytical and performance marketing side are actually making these things and deploying it, so they're more end-to-end.
That's awesome. I wish we could see it, but can you describe it to us? What do these videos look like?
So I was in the trenches with them early. I don't think, and none of mine did particularly well, so that was sad. But I'll tell you, a lot of it has become taking imagery we have and then using that to fully get into a video space. We have a lot of character strawberries, so some of it will be a turkey strawberry that starts flying around, interacting with friends and doing things, and it's fascinating to see at scale what people are responding to. There was a Halloween berry that suddenly had a weird smile that we didn't even quite catch, but that ad took off and people were commenting like crazy. And I go, why is it doing that? So a lot of it is movement and video based on what we're actually selling, and it's gotten very good now. So it's quite hard to differentiate between what we're creating with Gen AI versus that.
Awesome. Michelle, I feel like your use cases are going to be slightly different to animated strawberries. Can you tell us a little bit about how your organization in your outward-facing consumer marketing is looking?
Yeah. Well, actually, some of it is the same, actually. So I think I'd start a little bit broader with, we don't think about AI and marketing separately from actually growing the business, right? So it is a cross-functional, cross-business effort, and because of that, my CIO, and myself have partnered to create the AI strategy for the entire organization, our global organization. And that means we have a community of practice of representatives across functions like legal, HR, marketing, all the functions, and the business units. And we're working on 4 different work streams, and there's some creative examples within those work streams that I'll hit really quick. And so the first one is AI literacy. We want all of our employees to be literate. So our Future Nav solution for employers has a module that is called Adapt AI. It's actually launching next week and officially, and it measures the AI it's AI powered, and it measures AI literacy and gives people insights, individual insights, so that you can create personalized learning pathways to increase that proficiency. The second work stream is about efficiency and effectiveness, as most companies do. And so we're using a lot of AI tools like to help with idea generation. So for example, sometimes coming up with a product name that is trademarkable is a heavy feat when you are trying to do that globally. And so we're utilizing some AI tools that are helping us to vet that quicker and actually help us generate some ideas that would help be more successful when you go through that trademark process. The other one that's similar to what you were just talking about is that we do a lot of demo videos, right, to help sell our products and solutions. And so utilizing AI to help stitch together these videos with the actual assets that we have is helpful. But recently we did an experiment where someone in our organization did the VO, right, their voice, and we used an AI tool that created 42 different voiceovers for that. And from male to female to maybe you couldn't tell to different accents, so that we could have more content that maybe is relevant across the globe and give us more optionality. And then the third one is customer outcomes. This is so important because utilizing AI in a responsible way to create outcomes that your customer wants. So for example, with FutureNav, ensuring that it's fair, valid, reliable output of retention or upskilling, reskilling outcomes is super important. And then the last one takes all of us. We want to help increase principles and standards in the industry for responsible use of AI, particularly in assessments. And so our credibility in this space is incredibly important. And again, it takes our whole organization working towards that.
Awesome. Alicia, the discussion about accents, languages, that made me think of your business because, of course, you are so international and you have many visitors coming from all over the world to come to Rockefeller Center and places like that. How are you using AI to hopefully navigate some of that space a little bit easier?
So on a yearly basis, we have about 35 million people that come to Rockefeller Center, and that's a global audience that comes. And so one thing that's really important to us in everything that we do, whether we're looking at that B2C side of the business, visitors, or the B2B side of the business that we have, is really that customer journey. And how can that be as personalized as possible? And we do that as a business in a very one-to-one way in terms of how people experience coming into our buildings. And we've had a huge focus on hospitality and that feeling that you get when you have that experience. And so we've really tried to say what's core to who we are as a brand and how can we then leverage different tools to extend that. And so when we started to look at that area of personalization and who's coming in and what are they going to experience, we recently redeveloped Top of the Rock, which is our observation deck. And so a lot of travelers want to come experience that. And so we wanted to meet them where they are. And so we partnered with our agency on creating actual customer personas and testing different creative for different groups of people. Are you coming as a couple? Are you coming as a family? What is going to be your experience? And then how are you going to receive that message in a personalized way that feels and extends that hospitality? So we've done that in partnership with our agency, Known, and we've built custom tools around that. A second area and sort of use case and focus for us is really around every time we have a customer interaction, whether that's, we heard about decks in the prior conversation and things like that. How do you make them more personalized? How do you make them really have everything come to life for us when you're thinking about space and thinking about the future of that space, leveraging renderings and things like that? What is that going to look like in the future? Right now, we're building JP Morgan Chase's headquarters. You can interact with us in a lot of different ways. And so whether that's, a small footprint or the other, so that's sort of a second use case that's been really helpful, because that was something, I came to real estate 3.5 years ago. That wasn't my background. That wasn't my industry. And when I found out how long something like renderings take, in some cases, it would be weeks and months. And so that was just an area for our business in particular that was of interest. And I think the third area has really just been around looking at very specific ways where something is happening and we can do something that hasn't happened before. And so I think an example of that is, if you're going to come to Rock Center and you are looking to get information and you're interacting from a customer level, like, what information can we feed to you as quickly as possible? What is our experience of getting you through all of that? So whether that's from a digital map or whether that's from you're making a phone call or asking a question, that customer service function has been another area.
Right, and are you in charge of overseeing that in your job, that kind of customer service, customer experience part of things?
So we are working really closely with each team, and so that sort of sits within property management, that sits within many different groups, but we're working, at the table with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, for Andrea and Michelle, I mean, that is something, both of your companies are very one-to-one with customers. How have you been using AI into that sort of final stage of the funnel, that, whether it be a chatbot or something like that? Are you using AI for any customer service kind of things?
Let me go. Yes, and in ways that I think are a little bit more elevated than just a chatbot and customer service. So I mentioned I have the enterprise innovation team, and this is a team that has been developing AI capabilities that we can utilize in our products. So, for example, one of our products, FutureNav Presence, measures effective communication. And so utilizing AI, multimodal AI, we can give you insights about how well you're communicating, your eye contact, your rate of speech, the quality of your answer, things like that. So that's been one way. And the other way is interesting because it hits on so many levels, not just efficiency, but like customer outcomes, et cetera, that our customers are sometimes hard to reach. Like, we have a very complex, we're B to I to C, so to like institutions to consumers, right? B to G, government officials. That's really hard to get a focus group of. And then, B to B and some of those decision makers, like HR decision makers, sometimes it's hard to get them. So our enterprise innovation team has created personas, AI-powered personas, that we utilize in our concept development, value proposition development, as well as product usage and testing, so that our product teams get faster iterations of improvement. And so these personas are very interesting because, we're utilizing psychometric behaviors and, personality traits and, all sorts of things to create almost real synthetic humans to help us in that innovation process.
That's fascinating. Just on your previous point about being able to use AI, I guess, to monitor and come up with an analysis of a customer interaction, are you talking about in your call centers? Where is that actually sitting? And I wondered, the staff that are sort of, that are involved with that, how are they reacting to this new technology?
For call centers?
Yeah, if that's where they are.
what I just described is not. It's in our product development process, right? So they're more helping our product teams develop the products and the user experience of those products. But what's difficult, like I was saying, is like it's hard to recruit, your typical research panel to be your user. To help you continue to iterate. And so these personas are helping us to do that. But in call centers, definitely chatbots are helping. Being able to use AI to analyze information, I think, is also incredibly important because it brings the real problems to bear much quicker for our staff to be able to help solve those.
Wonderful. Did you want to come in there, Alicia?
No, I was just saying the customer personas is also something that we've done, and that's been incredibly beneficial. I think being able to just look at what are the ways that don't take you to needing a focus group as you did historically, and what are the ways and the insights that you can drive has been helpful as well.
Awesome. Is there any platforms or pieces of technology or aspects of AI that the audience might not have stumbled upon themselves yet that you've found to be really useful in all of this?
Is there a specific aspect you're thinking about? I think a lot of the platforms, at least with this audience, have sort of been covered. So it might be use cases instead, but I don't know, tech-wise.
I don't know. Well, I mean, anything that you've really found in your business to be like, okay, this is the one that's working really well for us. We're going to, go full speed behind it.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of this being too specific, because I think to your question, there's a lot of what stack are you using then? For us, about 6 months ago, video got really good. And with Google coming out with VO3 and several platforms doing it, I think that's only going to accelerate. But we've used Runway ML a lot for our video platform. We use 11 Labs to do voiceovers for a lot of what we're doing. Same thing where we had voice actors, and the last minute they forgot to say our brand name, so it kind of came out of a problem that we had. And then I think it's just a mixture of, and I think prior speaker mentioned, when you have Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT, it's testing across all of these because I think they all have different strengths. And the last piece for us is really trying to figure out data at the company. We have 40, 50 years of customer data across 18 brands, and it's how do you give access to people where they can query a prompt and come up with answers, and that's very nascent still. And we're working with Snowflake, which is our data repository, to kind of get into that. So those are the big ones right now.
Great examples. Thank you.
Okay.
One example we have is just around search. That was mentioned earlier, a lot of how we're starting to just see people go there. And we've partnered with a firm called Bluefish AI, just really looking at how we're showing up as a brand, how all of our products are showing up, and what are the things we need to be taking care of on our own channels to make sure that when we are searched, what's coming up is the way we want to be put out there.
There's so many. I mean, it's hard to name them all, right? But I would say, if I go back to the example of it isn't just the marketing team, it's really across the entire organization. Utilizing some of the same tools, I think helps that cross collaboration process, and also helps us keep our sandbox, if you will, kind of safe, right? And so we, as part of that AI strategy team, we've partnered with Microsoft, bringing in Copilot and some of the other tools into our entire global workforce, so that we can again be on the same page for collaboration and usage of AI through some of these use cases.
Right, because we sometimes hear about companies, or very large companies, that wake up one day and go, "Oh my God, we've got 500 different platforms that are trying to be rolled out," and that's just such a headache, right? To simplify back and make sure there's implementation across the business. I wonder, is there anything that you've tried in this space that just hasn't worked for you guys, or at least hasn't worked right now? Like the technology isn't quite there yet, or it just wasn't right for your customers?
mean, personally, I feel like you find that daily. You know, you're hoping for something, you're testing, you're learning. And so I think what you want to see is what does work, and just sort of recognize that you need to focus on iterating. You need to focus on, you know, trying to figure things out. And so I would say it's happening early and often. And then sometimes you get a big surprise where you're like, wow, this is incredible. This worked much better than I anticipated it working.
I think one of the places that you always need to focus on from a strategic standpoint is, you know, what is your point of difference as a company or a business? And, you know, is that where you're going to invest, right? Or are you going to buy, right? So that build, buy, or partner kind of concept in this space, I think, is really important. And so, for example, you know, we can talk about AI content generation as, you know, this big space. And then when we take it to our core business, which is assessments, and, you know, what we feel that we are experts at, and we know from our reputation, is the measurement of science, or the science of measurement, sorry. And that's our purpose. Advancing the science of measurement to power human progress. So we can't compromise on that measurement piece. And part of what the input to that measurement is good content for assessments. And if you think about like how much content that actually has to be, it's not the same assessment that someone takes day after day or year after year, because there would be a lot of inequality in that, right? I mean, what if those answers got out, right? So you have to generate a lot of that content. So utilizing our in-house capabilities to actually build that capability has been really, really important versus trying to buy that capability in this particular case.
I think where we failed at times is not identifying the issues that people have with why they want to adopt. I think we're doing a better job now, and part of that has been being in the trenches with folks. But early on, it was creatives saying, this plagiarizes my work, this is tough. I think as people have kind of evolved and see it help them, I haven't heard that as much. I think the latest concern from folks that they were able to voice was, this is highly, highly energy consuming. Uses a bunch of waters and data centers. It's very difficult to give an answer that refutes that. And so some of these things that would maybe be blockers for folks are having the space to do that. I think it's an ongoing discussion. And I think as you evolve an organization, and for us, you know, when you look across the different folks, they're in very different departments, very different skill sets, different ages. I think having a pulse on that is important, but we've also failed at times to create that space. So that has been, over the last 2.5 years, a big ongoing effort, more so than any kind of tools failing or anything. It's a game of succession, right? As long as you're trying this stuff out along the way and failing, you'll learn. But I do think those considerations have been really interesting as we've gone on and trying to address those.
Thank you for that. It's a really thoughtful answer. Wonderful. We've got about 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions for the panel?
I have one,
Yes.
if I may. So, I feel you folks sort of walked up to the line with this theme, but never crossed it. And I feel like I just have to ask a question, which is, with all these amazing use cases, very impressive ones across the spectrum of marketing and beyond as well, I'm curious, have there been any implications for team composition so far?
Are you asking, have you fired anybody because of AI? It's a good question.
None, and
Structuring or reorganizing or different roles?
I think, so don't approach it at all from cost cutting, and we run pretty lean as is. I think what we've found is that certain people have now been able to absorb multiple jobs, and they're outperforming. So I think it comes to a point of asking yourself, all right, from an organizational composition, what does this look like? I think the shift for myself when I'm hiring people is not looking at a resume and trying to judge, are these people authentic, curious, and empathetic? Because there's a lot more depth to certain people, and what's been obvious is the skill set component. Some of this is for younger folks too. I think seniority-wise, this ends up being maybe slightly different, but it's all headed that direction. The types of questions that we ask too for folks coming on board have changed a lot. Your credentials are de-emphasized already some, and we've seen people pick this up a lot faster who maybe have those qualities and a lack of what you consider standard or traditional logos.
I would love to build on that because you're speaking my language over here. So I think two things. One is, like any company, we're always thinking about how do we reorganize ourselves to be better, right, and more relevant. And I think even when we're thinking about modern marketing teams or modern organizations, if you're not asking that question, like you're definitely going to get left behind. So AI literacy is one of the areas that definitely is on people's minds. We did a human progress report, 18,000 people, 18 countries around the world, and only about 40% of people thought that they were proficient in AI. I mean, that seems kind of like a big number, but then when you look at it the other way, you're like, wow, that's actually a really big gap. And when we asked HR decision makers, they were like, over 70% of them felt like that was a critical skill that they would be looking for to hire. The problem is, how do you measure that, right? Is it subjective or not? And that's why our FutureNav product, we're trying to put that science of measurement behind it so that you are confident in their abilities, because it's a situational judgment assessment. It isn't multiple choice. You're not going to measure multiple choice literacy. So that's one way. I think the other thing that is incredibly important is totally challenging the skill ecosystem that's important out there. Technical skills are important, but they're also learned, right? And it's these durable skills that you were just talking about: collaboration, leadership, creative thinking, resiliency, all of these things that are transferable from job to job. Again, you're not going to see those on a typical resume either. And they need to be measured, and AI-powered solutions like our FutureNav can measure those things reliably. The most important part about not just measuring them, though, is coding our jobs to say this kind of job needs this holistic skill set. And then once you have the measurement and you have the need, how do you match people to the right jobs and potentially match people to roles that maybe they didn't think they were going to be able to do, right? I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and now I'm in marketing. That seems like an odd switch, but not really when you think about, engineers are trained in creative problem solving or leadership or, things that are definitely transferable to other roles. And so I think we actually open up opportunities for people versus close them when we start to think about this bigger ecosystem of skills.
We've taken an opportunity to really look at what the marketing organization looks like and where does it intersect, and what might that mean for combining roles? What might that look like in a future state? And one thing we decided to do deliberately when we started to, about 2 years ago, really focus on that training and development piece was have somebody in the middle of the organization lead that initiative for the marketing team. So instead of going to a VP or an SVP, we went to a director. We selected her, we had her become the champion, and we created cohorts, and we started doing training from that point. And it was really interesting to see the adoption, and we set up AI office hours on a weekly basis. And it was, started to see how the team started to function differently, and you started to see it come in not just as a technology, but an additional kind of opportunity in the room for how you are going to create. And so I think what I'm seeing more than anything in our particular organization is what is the makeup of that team? How many senior people do you need? How many mid-level people do you need? What are those structures to actually get the work accomplished? And where are the intersection points within the organization where it may make sense to rethink some of these things with this new system that we've created? Because some of these things don't need to happen. They're accelerated now. And that gives more time for insights. That gives more time for analysis. That gives more time for being creative. And so I think that's been, what we've seen is that organizational makeup piece.
So more of a reshuffle, a think about a reshuffle than a full on.
I mean, over time we'll see, right? I mean, I think everybody sort of recognizes over time, I think my gut says reduction will happen. But I think that's something that's been said, and I agree. If you are doing right by your organization, you're constantly looking at what your investments are across the organization and how you're supporting those goals. And that's an always on, regardless of AI endeavor.
Wonderful. We had a question over there.
You feel good about that shit? Uh-oh.
Yes, no, thank you.
I've got dead battery. Do we have a backup?
So my question is, Alicia, you used the word system at the beginning, and I think as we shift from thinking of individual use cases to systems, we can think about them in marketing, we can think about them cross-functionally, and Michelle, I think you talked a lot about that, and then I think we can think about them with external partners and markets. What do you think will need to become more important as we move from thinking about sort of micro uses of AI to much more macro and connected uses of AI?
I could start off. I was at a roundtable yesterday, and a lot of conversations, and I think the change that is coming probably faster than, well, at least maybe I realized, I won't speak for everyone else, is that the future of the workforce might look very different. And it might be hybrid, not hybrid in location, but you might have a lot of AI agents that are working for you and humans. And so, I think there's a couple of implications to that maybe we're not ready for. I have 2 Gen Z kids, one that's graduating college in a couple of weeks, and then right after, a high school, student. And my graduating senior from college, he's a mechanical engineer, material science specialization, can speak Mandarin. This looks like all the things that are right. No jobs. And it's a lot of the entry-level jobs, right, are needing 3 to 5 years experience. And, you would think, well, who doesn't need a mechanical engineer? We got things to build. But he's not been trained on, how do you manage a hybrid workforce like that? And what kind of skill is that going to take for, it's almost like you bypass the entry-level role, right? And now you need to have a higher order of ability, because even in the PR world, you're not asked to write the press release. You're going to be asked to edit the press release. And so, how do you manage these new workforces when you haven't had the experience maybe to build that muscle and be able to coach, whether it's humans or your AI agents, to do a better job?
So this is maybe a little bit of a different take, but I think not enough folks are talking about the end consumer and how they're changing. We're a gifting company, and we've been around several decades, but if you cast forward, what's the relationship people have between one another? We have more of a shared reality. Folks are already dating an AI bot for the younger cohort. And when you look at the way that people are consuming information, the relationships they have, and then as companies, what is the implication for us? I think that piece of it, and being very thoughtful about how you track against your customer base, we've been shifting younger and younger. Historically, we might have a bit older, homogenous customer base, but as we've gone more young and diverse, I think that plays an interesting role in the types of things you want to do to get in front of those people. We have so much content that we can create, but the attention span is more focused potentially over time in a few things. And I think the way that you actually interact and think about what the end customer wants when it comes to gifting or any other category is really important. And that, I think, will take a little longer. It's not the same rapid acceleration of all the tools necessarily. That adoption piece is still going to, you see it for younger folks who are operating within this a lot, but that I think is something we're trying to think through going forward.
And I think just to, think about where and how I've been thinking about it within our business is just what are those systems? There's so many. And so it really comes down to defining what that is, because we all exist in really complex organizations with partners. There's a lot of questions around what tools are you using? Who are you using that with? We have internal, we have external, we have the potential with agentic that you've mentioned, and I think about it very similar to what each of you have expressed. Instead of having somebody ready for college, I have a 9-year-old. And so I'm watching her interact with these tools. And I'm thinking about by the time she gets to the point where she goes to college, what is that going to mean? And so really thinking about what are the skills we need for today, what are the skills we're going to need a year from now, because we're always thinking forward about the businesses that we're trying to drive and what's going to be there. And so I think it's really thinking about the here and now, thinking about what you think that's going to be in 6 to 12 months, and then sort of recognizing that what you thought was going to take 3 months may now take a month. So where is that? And so what I've found is really helpful is just to sit with other people who are going through it and have the conversation, whether it's one-on-one, in small groups, in different industries, in all of that, because none of us really know. And so kind of figuring out how you can build what those systems might be and look at what's around. But I think it's a really exciting time to get to be part of figuring it all out together.
Wonderful. On that point, I have to ask. I sometimes wake up and I report on this stuff. I read about this stuff. I read about people dating AIs. I read about kids who can't get a job out of college, and I feel a sense of dread. Do you guys also feel that? And if you do, how do you balance any of those feelings with the work that you know that you need to do to remain, for your businesses to remain operating in this economy?
All right, I'll take a crack at it. So I think there's a bifurcation, right? On one side, I think folks are like doom and gloom, AI is going to destroy everything. And you have the AI is going to solve everything cohort on the other end. And I think being somewhere in the healthy middle is pretty good. So I don't think there's a solution, but I do think finding some joy in it and thinking through what that means. I have 4-year-old twins. It's been very interesting seeing when they do interact with AI, one of their first questions was, are you a real person? With the voice died and everything else. But I think if you go through it and are thoughtful around the implications, landing somewhere in the middle is, I think, useful. But like yourself, I think there's so many things that are very detrimental as well. And I think that part of it we're just going to have to contend with. It's here, whether we like it or not. And so that part of navigating it is huge.
Yeah, it's got to be a struggle, right? Because you're always teetering on the, oh my gosh, what if XYZ happens, or how can I be a positive force in change? And again, I go back to that human progress report we did. 60%, over 60, I think, % of people around the globe have had anxiety or sleeplessness of fear of being obsolete, being irrelevant. So we call it FOBO, right? That's a lot of people around the globe. And I think it's on all of us, to think about how we utilize AI responsibly, so that it is an enabler to human progress, right? And not a detriment. And we've been through a lot of transformations across the years, and so this is another one of those critical points where I think if we lean into the human characteristics and skills that we have, like being curious or being resilient or, those kinds of things. Those are the things that'll pull us through.
I think I would say just continue to think about your AI strategy with your people strategy. Recognize that it's people that are, in the equation. And be thoughtful. Be thoughtful with your team. Be thoughtful about how they may feel when they're testing and doing various things. And then I think, and it's a lot of it's been said here, we have the opportunity to build the world we want to see, right? And so it can sound very like Pollyanna to say that, but I think we've been here many times, and I think there is an opportunity and a responsibility. And that's something that's talked about in other sessions. But there is an opportunity to have those dialogues about what is responsible AI. What does that look like? And so just as we've all built compliance into our organizations and things like that, and there are, those various things, we each can think about the role that we play within that.
Wonderful. Well, sorry to end it on such a down note, but lunch is probably ready at this point. Thank you so much for joining me on stage today. Please give a round of applause for the panel. Thank you.